Welcome to the FeedBak podcast, everybody. My name is Back. It's been a couple weeks. I had to take a break from everything. So it's good to be back. And for this episode, I'm really excited. Really excited about this one. I'm going to introduce everybody. So returning champ, we got Micco. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard and seen Micco. He's been my co-host, my right-hand man for a while in a lot of episodes. So he's back for this one. We got
Hello,
Rebecca
world.
Reynolds. Oh, sorry. I should have let you say hi. It's been a 2 minute break, man. Fucks you up. Fucks your flow up, man.
Hello, world. It's what I always said.
I
What should I
know.
say?
We got Rebecca Reynolds in the house. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you.
So thank you for doing this. So you're a Austin music attorney for the Music Venue Alliance. You've been on the show. It's been 4 years. Last time you were on here.
Yeah.
20.
Wow. How much has changed in the last 4 years?
Yes. Not
Yeah.
much when it comes to Austin music, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, it was like 2016 when there was the whole omnibus thing going on. I really got involved with
Mhm.
what's happening in Austin. And there was town hall meetings going on, and I got to meet you, and we did like a whole podcast series about that. So go back and check it out if you get a chance. And introducing, we got Cody Cowan in the house as well. How you doing, man?
Doing all right, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for doing this. So you're co-founder of the Red River Cultural District, and owner of Mohawk. It's your own Mohawk, right? Or not anymore.
No, I just worked there for 10 years. Kept the lights on.
Oh, okay, did a great job there, by the way. So, I wanted to talk about, of course, the reason I'm bringing you guys in is because COVID hit and it took a toll on the live music scene, not just in Austin, but all over the world. So if you're listening to this, we're going to talk about Austin as an example, but it's happening all over the place, right? Venues are not being able to keep up with what's happening with COVID, the lockdown, the rents going up and everything. So I thought it'd be good to bring in knowledgeable people like you guys to share your insights, see what's happening, see how people can help, who's doing it right, and so on. So first of all, how's it been for you guys so far since it hit, like as an attorney and as a member of the live music community?
Well, COVID has meant some people are working or out of work, and it has meant that some people are working harder than ever. And we're certainly not frontline workers working in the healthcare industry. So I certainly don't want to sound like we've been overwhelmed as much as others have. But I will say that I and Cody have been working around the clock since mid-March on this. It really elevated the need for us to do our work. I mean, it was always really important, but we certainly have found ourselves in the middle of a crisis over the last 7 months.
Cody, how's it been for you?
Yeah, to echo Rebecca's sentiment, I feel like I was doing 2 or 3 persons jobs before COVID, and now I'm doing like 5. But to Rebecca's point, 98% of the people I know have been unemployed since March. So I feel blessed to still be employed and be able to feed my family and do the work trying to stand up for and advocate for our community to keep live music going in Austin.
I mean, at this point, this has been an ongoing topic that I was saying earlier, specifically in Austin, where you look into the city for help in terms of funding, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of relief for venues. And this is a conversation that's happening for, correct me if I'm wrong, decades at this point. And it seems like it's every time something, it's like one step forward, 2 steps back kind of deal, where Austin is still growing faster now than ever, and people are coming here and like, oh, Austin is known for his live music capital of the world, blah blah blah, and you show up and go, what the music at, right? So in a sense, it's been kind of like a groundhog's year or decade, but is it that the COVID had just accelerated the need at this point, and do you see anything happening that's actually different this time around?
Yeah, I would say that the COVID situation made it clear that the government has a role in supporting the venue community in Austin. I think that's where we kind of got caught in a cul-de-sac over the last decade or so, is everybody cares about live music and everybody loves all of our venues, but no one was really committed to the idea that the government and the city of Austin specifically had a duty to provide financial support for the venue ecosystem. I think there's a lot of perception out there that venues were very busy, so therefore they were making a lot of money. And is
That
it
was the
up to the-
perception?
I think so. Would you say that, Cody?
Yeah, no, I think every time we came discussing the challenges that the music venues and the live music ecosystem were facing, people are kind of looking at us like, y'all are wildly successful. That's lifestyles of the rich and the famous, you know, champagne dreams and caviar, you know, whatever, you know, and we're like, nah, man, that's like the music video. We're just like really good at marketing, you know, like that's like, don't believe the hype. That's like television. We're over here working 7 days a week, like living check to check, and dealing with the same problem that everyone else is dealing, which is a city that's like growing double in population over 10 years, like kind of industrial age growth inside of a global economic system that is quickly leaving behind regular people. I mean, it's like, you know, as I don't need to tell y'all, like, have our wages and have our earnings match the rate of increase of cost in Austin. I mean, I don't think this is Austin's fault. This is just the way it works and has been working. But if you got to hold on to the good, you got to fight for it.
I also
would add
think
some-
that, oh yeah, sorry. I also think that, you know, COVID created a situation where people had to consider a reality without our venues. I think before, nobody really kind of took that possibility seriously. And they kind of assumed that if you're not doing well, if you're not going to make it, there's something about the way you're operating your business. It's somehow your fault. But the COVID situation just really leveled the playing field, and it forced people to imagine an Austin without the venues. And so it's allowed us to have some really meaningful conversations about how important venues are to our culture and to our economy, and what is the city's role in making sure that we have venues going forward.
Micco, you had a
Now,
question?
I'll piggyback on what Rebecca said. You know, she mentioned it had been difficult for us to imagine what it's like without the live music venues. We don't have to imagine anymore. We're getting a snippet of that, and you know, they're struggling. A lot of people move here for the culture of Austin, and a huge part of that culture is the music. And I'm going to back up because this was happening before the pandemic, the gentrification conversation that we've had 100 times on this show. But people move here for the culture, but then they move into the building that tore down a live music venue. Ironically, it's the same people moving in that are pushing out the artists, but they're here for the artists. It's a problem Austin couldn't solve before the pandemic, and the pandemic has just accelerated that, you know, increasingly. I don't know what the solution is. I can say during to again piggyback a little bit to what Cody was saying earlier. Since live music and music in general is such a cultural staple of Austin, again, it's why people come here. You'd almost want to treat it almost like a cultural utility. I remember during the omnibus, back when we had Rebecca on, I remember a lot of the feedback I was hearing from people in the industry that were at City Hall said, hey, we don't want government handouts. We want just better regulation and policies and a way to do things. And they weren't, at least from my experience, they weren't looking to just get money from the city straight up or in any sort of way. They just wanted more assistance and support.
That's right. During the omnibus, they were just asking for fair regulation and fair oversight. But now, obviously, we have been asking for money because we're in the middle of a disaster.
Right. And it's not, Austin's not unique to that, right? This is happening across the country, across the world. Places are losing these live music venues in droves. And it's a problem. It's a problem no one has yet figured out the solution to. Lots of little efforts here, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of that. But
have you seen anything since the 2016, the omnibus? Have you seen anything that was actually promising, that was actually in place, that it was really a step forward and everybody just rallied around? It's okay, this makes sense. Like, did you see anything?
I mean, the one thing that I was able to kind of maintain some presence in that came out of the omnibus was sound compatibility conversations.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say, you know, we never really saw an implementation of new policy around that. There was a really great stakeholder process, and I think people really started to comprehend. We were able to, or the city did a great job actually of bringing neighbors and music venues together, and we had some really meaningful conversations that ended up in some great recommendations. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been any real implementation. Some of that was around you know, how do we work with police? How do we work with code? And we were making some progress towards that just before COVID. So obviously right now we're not dealing with sound complaints because there's no music.
Yeah.
So I think that that particular conversation was moving in the right direction, but it's taken a really long time. I mean, like you say, that was 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, when Cody, when you founded the Red River Cultural District, like you had a specific plan on how you could rally all the businesses in that area, the restaurants, the venues, I mean, the hotels, I think were part of it as well, to really build a model. It's okay. This is how we can sustain ourselves as a district, and here's a plan. Here's how it makes sense to us. How it makes sense to everybody, and here's how we can make it work. Did anything transpire, from that, or did the city actually go, okay, this makes sense, this is how we can help, or was it all like doing it yourselves?
I mean, I'll give the city a lot of credit for helping us establish the cultural district. I mean, I think when it was first created in 2013, it was more of a thumbs up to the music industry and to downtown venues. It didn't mean anything. But what they didn't know is it sort of planted a flag in the ground that allowed us all to rally to downtown. And then, our previous business plan probably as music people was, let's keep this neighborhood real shitty because then the developers won't come in and we can just like keep on, doing our thing and like they'll leave us alone because, it's so gritty. And pretty soon, I think we looked around Austin and looked at ourselves and went, yeah, that's not really how the world works. Like not cleaning your room isn't going to make your life better. This is not also how you entice new guests and audiences to your venues. Like being really dirty is not like a badge of pride like it used to be. So I think the first thing the cultural district did was allow us to kind of level up and evolve out of that maybe kind of immature headspace where we were still snarling and like, growling at our parents and instead became like, oh, we looked around like mom and dad aren't here. Like it's up to us to do something about this. We've got to step up and be the leaders for this because the cavalry isn't coming. The city isn't going to do anything.
Exactly.
Wealth isn't going to do anything for us. We'll just be paved under like so many other neighborhoods. So it brought a banner for us to come together, and the city through their SOLI program at economic development actually supported the work that the co-founders and myself did to actually start talking because folks in the district, they're like, you take Ryan Garrett at Stubbs, for example, he and I had worked downtown within blocks of each other for 20 years and we had never had a conversation. We'd never said a sentence to one another. It was just, you're busy working and you kind of see each other as natural competition and people just kind of ignored each other. But the district really allowed people to come together, sit down at the table at the same time that Rebecca and folks from the district and folks from the city were also coming down at another round table that's become Music Makes Austin to start really talking about these challenges in more mature, constructive ways that has turned into the work that Rebecca and I and others have been doing for the past 5 years.
Do you see a move towards the music scene kind of getting into these little pockets? Whereas right now, I mean, it was all concentrated and highly competitive downtown where, foot traffic was really what you were looking for. And now that, we getting, places are shutting down, condos are going up, hotels are going up, then the music scene is going to be kind of decentralized more and maybe more accessible to people outside of downtown. Do you see that movement happening or?
It's a
I think
for
we're
it.
going to see both. I don't think we're ever going to see a complete decentralization like you're talking about, because I think that it's within, you know, the Visitors Bureau and downtown and Red River, obviously, to
Sure.
have a central hub. And that's walkable, that has a cluster of venues. I think that's really important for just downtown economics and for tourism. However, you know, we are focused on helping communities outside of downtown establish venues. And that's a very delicate conversation, because you have a lot of neighborhoods who are worried about what that might mean for foot traffic or crime or, you know, drunk driving or noise, you know, and property values or whatever. But I do think that if it's done well and it's done in, you know, collaboration with neighborhoods, that there is a desire to have music that reflects the culture of the neighborhoods around town, rather than requiring everybody to go downtown, where you might get, you know, different types of programming, but it's not going to be that really organic sort of cultural space that you might get if you have venues in neighborhoods around the city.
Yeah,
I would agree. I think one of the advantages I've always talked about with Austin is that everything is so dense and packed together. It's, you know, when I go out to a live music scene or go out to see music, if I'm at one show and I don't like it or it ends, it's easy to hop to another. And not all cities have that. You know, a lot of places you have to go drive to the next venue. It's not an option. And that's a real advantage in Austin. That's why we have so many bachelor and bachelorette parties and meetings and conferences, because of that density. So that helps. But I agree with Rebecca. I think it shouldn't all be compacted in there. You know, you see stuff opening up a little bit further down, like South Congress and some other areas. I think even way out in West Austin, the Hill Country Galleria area, there's some music venues out there, or there were right before the pandemic, starting to get some. And it'd be nice to see more of the general community of Austin coming up, as Rebecca mentioned.
But sorry, go ahead.
I would say it's a great question, because it's hotly debated inside our industry by workers and advocates like us and musicians and government. I think it's interesting to observe that there are 3 types of live music businesses, and each one of those represents different parts of musicians' careers. You have music venues that have multiple revenue streams, and most of their money is not coming from live music, but often from being a bar or a restaurant or some other sort of economic activity. And I think those spaces are essential and part of Austin's story, but probably cater to early parts of people's careers in music as musicians. You have nonprofit spaces, which, unlike other parts of the country, we don't have a lot of those, but those are really helpful because they can access public funding and probably really curate the earliest and most raw parts of musicians' careers, which is that DIY sort of cultural scene creation, right? Where people come together and kind of rub friction with one another and figure out who they are before they go and kind of do professional work in harder places to get gigs at. Then you have a third type of venue model in Austin, which are like full-time live music venues. Their entire revenue is coming almost singularly from live music, and they're open, you know, 5 to 7 days a week doing that. And they're participating both in local live music careers, they're participating in regional careers, they're participating in national and international careers. So and also in festivals. So they become like the hubs where you see someone day 1 and you see someone day 50, right? So I think we're gonna need to keep all those 3 types of businesses in Austin. But, you know, to Rebecca's point, I'm skeptical that the third part, which, you know, represents the core experience in the cultural district, I'm skeptical that that'll be exportable to many places outside of downtown in Austin, largely because of what Rebecca said. I mean, the neighborhoods have already made it clear they're not interested in having venues there. In fact, they will fight tooth and nail to the death to remove them if they exist there currently. There's just a lot of challenges. There's a perspective there. Like, there is sound, there is parking in neighborhoods, there are all sorts of things that if I were a homeowner, I'm sure I would get a bee in my bonnet about. But, you know, I just don't see the opportunities in city limits, because again, if this goes back to gentrification, I mean, I'm sorry to say I can't follow all your podcasts podcast, but if this goes back to gentrification, where are you going to put the venues? Where do they go? Well, they're not going to Terrytown. I'll tell you that much. And growing up in Austin, the conversation whenever there's something people want to get rid of, they're like, East Side, like how about that? But we all know East Side's already been an entry point for development for gentrification. It's like, how far east do you want to go? Like Louisiana? Like what are we talking about? I mean, it's just like who wants to have the beats going at like 2 a.m. next door? I mean, some people do, but not many. So I think it's really important not for us to keep in mind that there's an ecosystem and a portfolio that we have in Austin, and we know that we're going to lose people because we have already. But if we don't retain the bones of that, then we are just SOL. Because I mean, where's it gonna pop up? It's all of a sudden going to become too expensive to put a new venue downtown, and then it's not going to be desirable to put it anywhere else, unless of course perhaps it has more of a food and beer vibe, because people know, oh, it's just on Saturdays or Fridays or Saturdays. I don't have to trip too much about it, But I think there's a space for everyone because a career takes all those spaces. So I'm hopeful that we'll retain that.
Well, when you're talking about the competitivity, is that a word? Competition. It's stupid. See, my English, I'm telling you. Competition.
English too. That's like the only language I'm good at.
So how competitive it is between in the music scene, like you were saying, like you work, down the street with other from other venues, and yet you didn't really communicate. You didn't not necessarily collaborate, but you didn't know each. There was no sense of community in the sense that, until you came around with the Red River Cultural District. And there were all these, during the pandemic, there was all these relief programs. I know there was a lot of talks about how much money was getting allocated, to music, and who was getting the money and who was not getting the money. What was the deal with all that? I didn't quite follow there were like a bunch of different, like how many relief programs were there during so far?
Well, so in the very beginning, the city took some of the money they got from the federal government in the CARES package and set up a $5 million fund for the creative sector. And that ended up going to payments to individuals that are working musicians and people who work in the creative sector, so creative workers. We just, as of this last week, were able to get a dedicated venue fund, which didn't come out of the federal relief. It actually came out of a variety of places within the city budget, but we haven't yet gotten that money out. They're still working on how to disseminate that money. And there was, from that CARES package, a small business relief program that was meant for all small businesses in Austin. So a few of the venues were able to get a little bit of money out of that program.
Yeah, and I found some numbers, and I think it was 1.4 million went to arts and entertainment, and 1.3 million went to personal care. And you're like, why isn't first of all, why are you getting your hair done and your nails done and you can't go nowhere? Stupid. And second, why is it that it's still not the priority? I don't know, like, how is the distribution and the allocation of that money decided? Do you guys have any insight on that?
Go.
Yes.
No, I mean, if we take so $2.5 million were given to musicians and creatives, and then we have about 800K going to venues. From the small business grant, there's 16 million in that one grant alone. And there were 15 allocation places, and we were number 13 of 15. So we were like third last in terms of priority. So, that if you talk about the brand of a city and taking seriously the need to retain that brand and all the people that represent that brand as a creative economy, that seems a bit of a slap in the face to go.
That's a punch in the nuts.
You are third to last important to us. Like the Austin third to last important live music capital of the world. It's like incomprehensible, really. But yeah, I mean, I'll try to stay positive with it, because I think Rebecca and I have been so in the weeds with it. It's easy to drill into the negative experiences and kind of criticisms that we have, even if we have to observe some of them. But the city, in all honesty, has stood up programs and delivered money on a timeline in 3 months that they probably would have taken them 3 years to do normally, for whatever that says about the system and the process. Also, our city is one of the only cities in the country that's fully committed all of its funds from the CARES Act, but also actually given any money whatsoever to music or musicians or anyone. Like working inside of NEVA, the National Independent Venue Association, I talk to folks all over the country every week. And it's like, there are plenty of cities that are going, our staff and our city council are just now talking about, so what kind of programs what do we want to do with this money? It's like, yo, like, you got to spend that by the end of the year legally or give it back. Are you kidding me? This is like the end of October. So I give some credit there, but I think, unfortunately, in order to get that money out, they had to make quick and fast decisions about who managed that money, and do kind of quick and fast criteria like coin flip lotteries. So, I get that got dollars in hands, but third to last place doesn't seem fair. And again, when I talk to people who are musicians or creative workers, I know people who did the exact same job and put in the same application, and one person got it, one person didn't. It's kind of like, and never mind with the venues, you have venues that have been around 20, 30 years that everyone in this room would know and have good memories and feelings about, who couldn't apply for it because of some of the criteria hurdles. And I mean, it was just kind of a mess, I think, from a private side perspective. But I will give credit, though, that the city did put something out that no other people had. So that's, I think, why it's so important we look at the money going forward to make sure we get it absolutely right.
Yeah, to that point, I just want to say, their focus on getting the money out quickly led to the decision to allocate, to answer your question back, how did that happen? A lottery system was put in place. And so it really was randomized in a lot of ways. And that's how we ended up with an allocation that doesn't maybe necessarily fit the city's priorities, or worse, the need as established by some of the data that we've received from industry surveys. So we are trying to bring down the panic that might happen again. Now that we have, a dedicated venue fund, that it's not going to be just sort of a blind random process. Because what we now know is that if we don't serve the entire ecosystem, we're not going to be able to save the live music capital of the world. You can't pick one here and one here and one here and one here randomly, and then let the rest of them starve to death. And then come out of this with an ecosystem that's going to be able to revive our tourism economy and all of the other parts of why the venue ecosystem is so important to our city. So we really need to go top to bottom and make sure everybody has what they need. We certainly are aware that there's not enough resources to, quote unquote, save everybody. But we need to try, and we need to see how much is needed to save everybody before we can see that there's not enough money to help everybody. So it's our proposal that rather than doing another lottery, that there be very systematic outreach to every business that qualifies as a music venue, to find out precisely what they need to make it through this.
So was there was it a problem? I mean, they didn't give an answer as far as why you got rejected, why you didn't get the money, right? And that was a very political answer there, Cody. So I can say it. That was fucked up. That was fucked up. This is Austin.
Dak's words, not Cody's, everyone. Just so
yeah.
they
This is
know,
my
'cause-
words. This is a feedback words. You can quote me. I'm looking dead at the camera right now. If you ever listen to this, City Council, Steve, I like you. You're a good guy, but come on, man, this is fucked up. It just doesn't. It just doesn't add up. And the fact that, well, let me ask you this. Is there any model or any city who's actually done it somewhat better that we can look at and go, oh, well, I think Nashville, because it's the first music city that I think about, maybe, Nashville or New Orleans or wherever that's actually done it better. And we can be like, okay, these guys got it. Let's see what we can learn and try to apply it here. Have you seen anything like it?
No, not domestically, but I will say that our UK partner, which, my organization is the first chapter of an organization that started in the UK. They were able to get a venue package, and they just successfully were able to get, I think, funding for 89% of their membership through that fund. So they've done exactly what we just proposed. They sat down with their membership and did the casework to figure out how to match up the public funding with the need for the businesses. So that's the only example I can think of that appears to be successful at this time.
Yeah, it's like countries that had good social services and good supports of the arts, like EU and UK and Canada and probably others, have ongoing support there. There isn't a single story in the US that even meets what we've done in Austin. So for better, for worse, we're pioneers in this. So it is an opportunity. I mean, as on inside baseball growing up in Austin, this live music capital of the world thing is a joke. Like in the music scene, we all laughed at that. Like these guys, like, who do they think they are? Like, we don't see you at shows. You're the guys that beat us up in high school. Like, get out of here with all that, you know? So it is interesting though, now that the pride in keeping that brand and that image though is making people step up a little bit faster than other people, which is about time. It's like, good. Like, don't put stages at the airport and turn on neon signs bragging on Austin's music if you can't do something to support it. Like, if you can't keep it alive,
It makes
like
no sense.
It makes no sense. Like, so step up. So
I mean, and
Here
it
we
is a moniker, and I found that out years ago that, and maybe it's not the case anymore, but the moniker is owned by the Visitors Bureau. Is that still true? So they own that so that they can get, their job is to bring conventions to Austin and businesses to come do their conferences and all that stuff, to fill up hotels, and that's how to get money. And it's actually a separate entity from the city, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
they come
it's a
from,
quasi-governmental entity. Yeah.
yeah, but they have their own like marketing team and their own staff and all that. So they operate in their target audience is businesses. It's not Joe Schmo who wants to check out some shows. And it's just sad that it's still, I mean, years later we're still talking about this, and yet there is no, not that there's no solution. It's like it's got to be disheartening. But I'm always curious. What I've been curious about during this whole pandemic, and any time of crisis like this, you see like who gets creative and kind of like adapt and figure out, okay, this is messed up. We can't do that, but maybe if I do it this way, that at least I can get some money in my pocket. Have you guys seen any model that actually works, even like for music venues? I mean, the online shows are obvious. And I don't know how much that's actually impacted the music scene as a whole, but it is an outlet. It is an option. It sucks. It won't replace the actual in-person thing, but it is something, right?
The challenge is the business plans are tied to commercial leases and how much square footage that folks have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the business plan is I can have a sold out show for 1,000 tickets, and every person there spends at least $10 in drinks per person, and if I do that enough, I can make my $20,000-$30,000 rent. Like that's the business plan plus all the other expenses. So there is no curbside 1,000-person show. There's no like to go or delivery 1,000-person show or selling 1,000 drinks a day, or selling drinks to 1,000 people a day, more than 1,000 drinks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of line extensions like merchandise, like selling music online, like streaming. But again, the margins on that are so low. Like they're so low. So I think these are all things that are, I think, tests to what we need to be doing in the future and adding in more value, because clearly it's fragile. And I think for any of us as sort of armchair pandemic news experts, we're seeing that these sorts of things, like many other disasters, there's a high probability of us going through something like this again in our lifetime, for better, unfortunately. So we're going to have to find some more resilience not just for live music venues, but I think for all service and hospitality, because we don't talk about all the wage workers in hospitality and musicians and workers that are actually building not just a city, but this country. I mean, how do you do that virtually? How do you like clean hotel rooms virtually? How do you like, you know, make food and sell food virtually? I mean, it's incredibly challenging, even for an industry that prides itself on creativity and really hard knock scrappiness. So I don't know about Rebecca, but I haven't seen anyone here or nationally that's being able to turn on a successful alternate business plan. They're just people that aren't open at all, or people that are getting what money they can, knowing that something is better than nothing, even if, you know, in 2019, this wouldn't have kept their lights on.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody pivot to something that's paying the bills, but I have seen a lot of creative, what can we do rather than nothing conversations. And a lot of that depends largely on where you're located, what kind of property you have. Obviously, if you have an outdoor space, you now are in a position where you have a market advantage, and people are definitely learning how to take care or take advantage of that. But I also, you know, I talk to venue owners every day, multiple every single day, and there's been a lot of concern over, do I break ranks? You know, is the venue community going to get mad at me if I try to hold the show, or if I try to take advantage of the pivot to a restaurant type model just so I can put my workers, you know, back on the payroll? Or is it important that we all, you know, just stay hunkered down until we know what kind of relief is on the way? And my message has just been, you have to do what's right for you, and we will help you do that, whatever that is, as long as everybody's maintaining, you know, public health and safety protocol. Then we will help you figure out which pivot makes the best sense for your business. But none of them, you know, even the ones that I've talked to that have large outdoor spaces and are operating as full capacity is allowable right now, are not breaking even. They're not, this isn't a business model that's going to help them stay afloat.
You know,
Actually,
Beck, I haven't seen,
go
I haven't
ahead,
seen
Micco.
anybody. I agree with what Cody and Rebecca said. You know, I've looked globally, and no one has cracked this nugget. Other businesses have an opportunity to innovate and pivot and do other things and curbside. But the nature of live music, you know, unlike Rebecca and Cody, right? I don't come from the business side of it. I come more from the fan and consumer side, a big one on that end, but I come at from a different angle. And I'm not even, I mean, as a consumer who goes to a lot of live shows, probably one of the people that goes to the most, I don't feel comfortable going. I mean, maybe an outdoor show, maybe. I mean, but that's part of the challenge. Like, even if you can open up, there's a whole other hurdle of, will people even come? Amongst all of this.
And it's made the sort of existential question about the value of venues come to light, because I remember hearing early on in the pandemic, you know, musicians were able to pivot to streaming shows at home, and some were even saying, see, we don't need the venues, we'll be fine, we can do this, you know, from a streaming model. But what we now know is that venues provide togetherness. That's what they sell. That is their business model, is community and togetherness. And yes, there are ways to distribute the product of music digitally or, you know, in other retail ways, but there is no way to provide togetherness around music without the venue space.
Yeah, I want to jump back in there and just say that's a lot of reason why I go to shows. I enjoy the community, the communal experience of being there with other people and kind of sharing that same energy. And you do not get that in a virtual show.
No,
and it's a loss. I don't like streaming. I don't like these live streaming shows. It's basically a music video, ultimately. I mean, there's a couple nice aspects to being live, because you might see something you haven't seen before, but ultimately it's a set production, and it's just not the same. You don't have people around you. And again, hard nut to crack.
It is. I try to think of it like a glass half full kind of deal, where, okay, at least we get that. If it's not from a consumer perspective, at least we get that. There's a concert series that's happening at the Hotspot. Have you guys heard of that? With Shiny Ribs and Grupo and all that. And so it's like, okay, here's the model. I don't know if they're breaking even or what, but they have a full concert series. You reserve your ticket is a parking spot, and you stay in your car, and it's all safe, or however the safest it can be, I guess. And then somehow, I don't know if they make it work. I would assume so. But here's a model. But they have the space, they have the outdoors, they have all that infrastructure already in place. Um, and so I guess my question is, the main problem is not necessarily how to reinvent yourself. You can't really reinvent yourself. You don't have the means to, and basically, if you can't take care of your bills, it's hard for you to be like, okay, let me jump on this pivot and do something else, right? So at the end of the day, it is a money issue, and how to keep the basically be able to pay rent on your venue. Is that accurate?
Well, it's also a consumer demand issue on top of it, right? Because right now, to kind of piggyback on what Rebecca's saying, we only have two real experiences that are being offered in Austin for music and for other experiences as consumers, and that's all fun, no rules, and all rules, no fun, right? Like that's it, right? So I think our challenge, especially in the coming days, will be to figure out how to say rules, fun. Like we can say rules quietly first, but then we say fun, because there's plenty of people who I think we're starting to get comfortable with what our risk assessment is for all this, what our threshold for how we're going to create our new normals inside of COVID. And if there was confidence that you could say, go to a show at Antone's or go to a show at Empire, other places, if there's confidence that, yeah, these people know where I'm coming from. They know I want to have fun, but they're also not crazy. They're just not like, anyone come in and do whatever you want. Then people will go out and spend some money there if they have it. So I think this is like a huge opportunity, because I don't think we should have any confidence in government top to bottom swooping in and coming up with the solutions, or coming, never mind getting on the same page even in our state. Like, forget about it. It's not going to happen, but it's going to be up to us, I think, to produce and create something, knowing, again, to Rebecca's point, if say Empire has like a 1,600 person capacity, like them selling 125 seats at a table is like not going to pay the bills or the mortgage, but it's an experience that can be had now, rather than no experience at all. And I think more importantly, all fun, no rules, which again, there's plenty of opportunity for that experience and for that audience. But I think the really hidden, untapped audience is a lot of folks who, especially for those of us who are parents, shout out to music parents. It's like, we don't have the luxury of just saying like, fuck the world, like, let's go party. It's like, oh yes, except this living creature, this human being depends upon every decision that we make. Yeah, that's not.
When you can't make a thought, you go, fuck, I have a kid.
Right? Yeah.
That's what it was for me at first. Like, yeah, I want to do. Oh, damn it, I have a kid.
Yeah.
I love you, son. I love
For real.
you.
There's been so many things. I'm like, you're grabbing my camera, because I shoot photography too. I'm like, I'm gonna get out here and do this, And my lady's just like, you're a dad. You're a middle-aged dad. And I'm like, yeah, yes, ma'am, I am. I'll go put that back down.
So I guess so the big ask really for the city is find some money so at least we get our bases covered, right? Because I mean, the way it's looking, this is, I mean, I think I'm not no doctor, I'm not Fauci's brother, but it's gonna be here to stay. We have to learn how to live with it, right? So there's gonna be some risk no matter what. It's really about this is where we are right now. We're like at the bottom. This is the bottom. And then like how we move up maybe a couple inches to where we can go back to at least doing one thing, like go to the movie theater or go to a show or just hang out with my friends. It's just something like just a little upgrade. Because it's been 9 months of, yeah, we can do this. Oh, no, go back, lockdown. Oh, we can do this. No, lockdown, because people are fucking it up for everybody. So,
well, it's like trust, right? This is like in a relationship. It's like getting trust back. Trust is not like some floaty in the cloud kumbaya thing. Trust is like literally a purchase. like each and every one of us purchased that trust through our actions, through our integrity and our ability to follow through with the things that we say we're going to do and who we are. And once that's broken, it's like, you know, we've all been there. We all know how that hurts and how that affects us. But you can't just, unless you're crazy, you just don't give that trust back for nothing. I mean, I think we've all tried that at least once in our life and probably gotten our hand bit twice. But, you know, that has to be purchased back through new good actions, through new things that go, okay, I'm building this back up with you. I know we had a moment, but I'm giving you a chance. And I think this is the opportunity with consumers now for venues and for other small businesses to go, what's the new social contract? How can we build trust with you to know that we're going to take care of you if you take care of us, so we can just do what we can do right now.
Cody, I have a funny story about that I heard from a venue owner yesterday, who said that they have gotten 3 visits from code officers this week. And normally, you know how that goes. Normally they walk in and they say, we're going to shut you down. We're dumping the club because your sink is too close to your door or something like that. So it's usually a very contentious relationship. But this venue owner told me that they came in and were just overwhelmed with how well the venues were doing at trying to create that level of trust, and just went on and on about the HVAC systems and the sanitation systems and the masking and the distancing. And that for the first time, this venue owner has been doing this a very long time in this city. He felt that the code officers were there to help him and had a very, very good experience with them, because they now had this shared experience of trying to create that level of trust for the community.
That's a great point. I think that's something that for generations has worked against us as a community, because, you know, even in sort of side of arts, music, and venues don't get the same respect as that other modes of creation do. I think it has to do with socioeconomics and class, but there's also this perception that everyone's kind of like criminals and they're like out for themselves, you know, they're like like marauders or something. But I feel like we've been developing for at least the past 5 years this like really unusual rapport with the city and with consumers. It's like, actually, we're like the do-goods and the try-hards. like
and the
we
risk
care.
takers, like,
You know, we might have like face tattoos or whatever, but like we really like big softies in our hearts, and we like are idealists, you know?
I have a dream, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard that so many
you know?
One day I'm gonna get on that stage. I love music, man. Like, yeah, go for it.
Don't listen to my lyrics. I'm really a snuggly teddy bear, you know? That's true.
I think that, I mean, the conclusion I came to 4 years ago when I was part of this whole conversation is that, I think that was the title of the podcast you were on, Rebecca. It was like, get help from the city, but don't rely on it, in the sense that you can't, as slow as they've been moving and as urgent the need has been, it's hard to really, to go back to your point, Cody, actually put trust in the city and be like, yeah, come on, help us out. When you just heard the stats, like, you're the most vulnerable industry with the highest proportion of businesses that rent the property they're on, and you're at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to money allocation. And like, meanwhile, I can see how, we have a convention center we're going to expand. It's going to cost $1.2 billion. Sure, why not? But it, fuck, I forgot where I was going with this. Give me a second. What day is it? Thursday. Just trying to calibrate my mind again. Yes. So, are you putting your hopes in this? Are you still putting your hopes in the city at this point? Or are you looking into other source of funding? The first thing that comes to mind for me is, we have all the tech companies here and they came here for a reason and they got money. So what's up with that?
Question.
I would say, you know, the title of the podcast 4 years ago was, you know, something along, to your point, something along the lines of ask for help, but don't rely on the city for your survival. Or something like that. And I think that this situation is different, like we said earlier. The city absolutely has, in fact, the point of government is to step in during disasters and, to provide social services to keep society running through things like this. So
Mhm.
this is a slightly different situation, and we do expect our city government, state and federal government to create a safety net for this industry to get through this. Because when you're dealing with the loss of business and jobs through no fault of your own, there is an obligation of the government to have a role in that sustainability. But to answer your question about the tech companies, that comes up a lot.
Mhm.
And the question is, do we try to get the government to force tech companies that come here to pay a tax, which then would bring down the incentives that they were offered to move here in the first place? And some people say, yes, you should have to pay, cultural maintenance tax if you're going to relocate your headquarters here. But that's an incredibly heavy lift. It's going to be very politically challenging.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that we can't create an environment where there's a foundation that tech companies or other wealthy people could donate to help support the music ecosystem. And that's something that we've been working on for a long time. Is like the nonprofit arts world has nailed this for a very long time. I mean, they have no problem asking wealthy people for money, and that's
Right, right, right.
largely how they exist. But the issue is music venues are not nonprofits. And so people get hung up on, well, how do we create a mechanism for people to give money to businesses that are supposed to be making their own money? And music venues fall in this really sort of middle ground where they're not like bars where they're making money hand over fist, and they're not the ballet where they get the benefit of tax breaks and philanthropy, but yet they create the same sort of cultural product that nonprofit arts organizations do. So I think that there's absolutely an opportunity for somebody to create a foundation that can tap into the you mentioned the ever increasing wealth that's moving to Austin to help sustain our culture so it doesn't get accidentally wiped out by their moving here. But
Mhm.
it requires somebody who has the ability to fundraise and to reach out to the people within those organizations to massage those relationships. And Cody and I can't do that. I think that there's a role for that. We just need the right person to come along and do that.
And support what Rebecca said. I agree with everything that you said, Rebecca. The only thing to add is I would say that we have attempted fundraising with
Mhm.
these sectors, and if we can even find the right person to talk to then respond to these sort of conversation starters, it's so esoteric to them to be like, why should we insert app or tech company? What do we have to do with music? Why are we interested in that?
You're in Austin for a reason. Fuck
Yeah,
off. You
well,
got to be here. You got to contribute.
I think it's an
I'm making
interesting
it sound
point.
really easy. I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
frustrating.
Like that,
No,
you
like
should
straight
do
up.
it. You should be the guy.
You're like my spirit wolf, because I've had these conversations here. I've had them nationally. I think something again that we have to recognize is that in terms of quick and dirty capitalism, it's like, what can you do for me? That's always the value proposition. It's not like how can I do good or how can I support good. It's
Yeah.
more often than not, how do I be profitable? Sometimes because of greed, but often because of I have bills to pay. Like,
Yeah.
my time literally is money, because if I don't use my time to pay bills, then I won't pay my bills. So that calculus does enter into it, but maybe not as one-to-one with tech. But no one in the country, this is a conversation we have at NEVA too. This is like, part of this actually, if I get really nerdy with it, has to do with the perception of established wealth's role in society for the past century. I mean, when you looked at the creation of, this is like really deep cut shit. I apologize in advance.
Go ahead. I'm sure there's some quotables in there.
If you look at the creation
quotables.
of like park systems at the turn of the century and in the industrial and gilded age, and the beginning of philanthropic institutions like Carnegie and Mellon and Rockefeller starting, who are also very controversial historic figures, starting libraries and philanthropies, there's a whole culture that emerged from that established wealth that moved forward, that kind of signaled as a prestige and cultural value to entrenched wealth that this is part of the privilege of being of this class, means participating in the community. We have a civic duty that comes with our status and with our money. That changed from pretty much the 60s forward to, I think, probably more relevantly in the 90s with the technology boom. There's been, with the new wealth, the new change of sectors and those sectors from which wealth had been appropriated, that cultural value was never reset, recaptured, or reapplied from that new group of folks. And what I hear talking to for-profit venues and from nonprofit cultural institutions nationwide, it's like drawing money from a stone. There isn't a peer pressure to where people go, oh, wait, what's up, Twitter? Like, you're not giving to these folks? Like, you're not participating? You're like, then you're not, like, we're not cool with you. There's just no expectation to do good. It's just not even part of the conversation at all. Whereas it was essential to the conversation in previous generations of
interesting, because the top, yeah, we're in Austin, the music capital of the world. We want to have our, Christmas parties, have a band and all that stuff, and yet you're not going to do anything to help out.
I have had this conversation with some people in the tech world, and they have, I don't want to say they, like everybody, but the people I've had this conversation with have literally said to me, you should be grateful that we're here.
Fuck
because
off. Sorry.
That's what they say. You should be grateful that we're here. We came and we brought our taxes, and we're creating jobs and we're creating value in the community just by our very presence of being here. And you all are better off because we're here. That's enough. What more do you want from us? I have heard that more than once.
We should be so grateful that they deigned to consider us.
Ugh. That's all I gotta say. It's just gross. That's just fucking gross. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. That's just gross. That's just gross.
I mean, this is the world we live in.
But I mean, I'm trying to. We're coming up on an hour here. Trying to think of, kind of look at the future. There is, Carlin found an article about a bill that was just. It's not. It passed the Senate. Can you share the screen, Colin, real quick, if you have it up? This is interesting. Is that what you're referring to, Rebecca? The CARES Act stimulus package? Or no?
Yeah. So this was in April.
This was in April. Okay.
Yeah. So the city of Austin has already spent or has already allocated all of their CARES money. So CARES was the first round of federal COVID stimulus. And the stipulations are, that you have to spend it on things that are not your normal expenses, that are COVID related, and you have to spend it all before the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So the city of Austin set up multiple programs and have already decided where they're going to spend all of that money. Which is why we ended up having to do the SAVES Act, where they had to pull money out of different disparate sources within the city budget, because they realized that once they spent all the federal money, the venues were going to collapse if they didn't come up with something else.
So what came out of that October 1st deadline? Are you guys able to share that or no? The recommendation, the work group that I was a part of for like 20 minutes.
Oh, right.
That I was mistakenly invited to. I'm like, nothing. I can't help y'all with this. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So Cody and I and the other folks on that working group included Harold McMillan and Will Bridges and Mercedes and from Venue ATX and 4 commissioners, music commissioners, I believe. And we put down on paper what we thought was going to be the best structure for the venue fund. It was then handed off to the music commission, which was then presented to the economic development staff. They kind of took it and made their own product out of it. They added some things and took some things out and then presented it to council last Thursday. What came out of that was a heavily amended version. So Some of the guidelines that we proposed in that group that you were originally part of will likely be part of the package, but it's not going to be the whole thing. So we're waiting right now to hear back from the music office staff on how they're going to implement this new fund. When people can apply, what the guidelines are going to be. And so Cody and I are trying to just stay very close to the process and be there to help until the money gets in the right place.
It's already been voted, or is there a vote coming up, or it's done?
Yeah, the money's been allocated. What hasn't been decided is how to
Oh, okay.
get it out.
Gotcha. Micco,
Beck, I
sorry.
want to note here.
Mhm.
Yeah, I want to note here when we're just talking about laws and what was brought up earlier in kind of relation to all this. There is a new, right, the White House and Congress back and forth for a while this fall, but there's a new stimulus bill that's in the works. Whether it passes anytime soon is that's a whole other political story. But one of the pieces in it is let me scroll through here. It's the Save Our Stages Act. And so similar to the CARES Act that provided kind of just a general fund of things that you really can't label very well in terms of businesses suffering during the pandemic. This one specifically calls out music and live venues. And there is earmarked currently in the bill $10 billion for closed venues and stages, which is much more than the CARE Act had. And it's targeted at the live music scene. Now, whether or not that makes it into the final package or something that's negotiated out is a whole nother story. But just want to note for everyone listening, but that's pending, and that would help greatly. Now, I just want to add my own commentary to that to say, I agree with what Cody and Rebecca were saying earlier, right? They're kind of the industry experts in this area. You can't rely on the government to come with a solution, right? They're not music experts. They don't have their finger on the pulse of the industry. What they can provide is the funding, and it's up to us to come up with the ideas of how best to utilize that. And sometimes it takes coming up with the idea first before anyone will throw funding at it. Sometimes it's that chicken before the egg process.
Yeah.
But anyways, again, Save Our Stages Act. Everyone listening right now, go and tell your congressman. They're listening right now to what the other constituents are saying, and say this is something you want voted for, particularly in Austin.
I said fuck off earlier, so I don't know. They only appreciate it. I said this is fucked up, but it's all right. It's all right. One other thing I wanted to bring up. So, COVID related, there are, if the issue, we get the part that you have to be able to pay your bills, you need the funding and everything. But as far as building that trust back, that you were talking about, Cody, earlier, I've seen more and more of these 15-minute test kits. Have you guys heard of those? So like shows that that have live audiences now, they get everybody tested in 15 minutes. Joe Rogan has a 15-minute test kit. And there are companies already who are manufacturing these kits. And like there's one called Becton Dickinson out of New Jersey, and they just got greenlit in Europe to manufacture and actually and make it commercially available by the end of October in Europe. So, and there's another one called Abbott Benex now or something, that same thing. They're like, 15-minute kits. It's available. I don't know how much it costs to get them. From what I saw, it was going to be like $5 per kit or something like that. Yeah. But it's already being implemented in a bunch of places. Rich people have them when they're having parties. I know like Dave Chappelle has been doing this summer camp thing, and everybody goes there, gets tested. And once you're in there, no mask, can just do whatever, but you test negative, at least the liability is not on him as far as, we actually, caused some spread and infected people. So if those kits become available, to businesses, whether you're a restaurant, you're a theater, you're a retail store, you're a mall, you're a music venue, and get to a point where, hey, you know what? If you want to come to our venue, we have this 15-minute test you have to take. So you have to show up early. We have your ticket. We have your name. But once you're in there, it's just a show. There's no need for masks, no need for social distancing, because everybody in here is safe. How you guys feel about that?
I want to speak to that first before we get our more venue, like the business-centric focus. folks going, because the trust factor is what it takes for big consumers like me that have the disposable income to come to shows all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
You need to get me there, right? And so that does. You can bake that into the price.
exactly.
Just have as part of the process. I've waited hours in lines for shows. So an extra 15, 20, 30 minutes having to get there early, so long as I know in advance and the expectation set.
And an extra 20
That's
bucks.
baked. Yeah, and so long as I know ahead of time and it's baked in, yeah, I'd go today. I'd totally go. And I know that everyone's safe or what have you. I'll add that in addition to those I think it's like $5 for a lot of those tests for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
They're coming out with a breathalyzer one where you can just have, oh yeah, Carlin I think might have it. Right. So coming out of a breathalyzer one, yeah, there it is. Where you get the results back in 15 seconds. And it's
Damn.
supposed to be highly accurate. It measures, are you spewing out any COVID-19? And it measures different strains. And, you just change the little topping on it per person and boom. I mean, that right there, you'll have a nice quick, you can move through a line pretty quickly that way. It takes more than 15 seconds to process a ticket, even if you've already sold it and check ID. That can just be part of that process. So I think in building trust, that's kind of what venues are unfortunately going to have to do. And hopefully the government can help the initial cash flow it's going to take to make that happen, right? Because everyone's hurting for cash right now, to get those things up and running in these venues so they can start getting people back and them trusting to be safe when they're there. I think that's what it takes. And as a consumer,
I would
that
pay.
would work for me to come back.
Again, this applies to every business, even airports. Get on a plane, blow this thing. Some lady died on a flight from Dallas, like the other day from COVID, like on the flight. So you get rid of the fear. Logistically, I don't know how that would work. People waiting in line in one room or the other room or what. And then if someone actually tests positive, but he's been waiting in line, so he could have infected everybody. But he was not in my business. He was not inside my establishment. So that's on you guys for waiting in line. But anyway, what do you guys think about that?
Cody, I'll let you take that one.
I think something we probably haven't observed is that venues under their 2019 business operations aren't legally allowed to be open right now, right? It's like in Travis County, according to state order, bars can't be open. Now, I know we're playing a lot of games with that and there have been loopholes for this stuff, but one, if I describe those different business models for venues, one included bars that do music on the weekends and then full-time venues that also get the majority sales from alcohol. Both of those places can't be open legally under current statute. So that's one hurdle. The other is the gatherings of people, right? Also prevent, regardless of what we're talking about with safety, prevent like a sold out show happening at Stubbs or something, So I think those are two hurdles that if we could find our way over or through those, then I think we could start getting really excited about different safety features and what the costs are and their efficacy and what process looks like operationally to engage in them. But as long as in Austin, as long as we're going, am I a venue or am I a bar that's now a restaurant? Or what am I doing here? And how many people can I come in here? And it becomes really problematic because, again, to Rebecca's earlier point, if you got a backyard or open area, you can make a go at it with something, but you can't be a venue like you were last year just by reason of law, in terms of how law is applying itself to public safety right now. So, currently you wouldn't even need those tests to go like hang out at the Far Out or Empire or some place that's doing some social distance version of live music venues. But maybe also a shadow thing to all this is, and this is just not to spook people out, but I mean, those venues with larger capacities, the majority of their income comes from touring shows because that's where you sell the most beers, the most Lone Stars to the most heads. Tours are not coming online for another year, and likely festivals will not be coming online in public spaces in Austin for another year. So, and that's a moving target also. That could get further out. So that's just also something I think to consider, not to, of course, be a Debbie Downer or negative, but it's like managing our expectations, because, you know, again, shooting photography, I'll go dip back into the old shots of shows and people stage diving and people just like wilding out. And I just feel my blood pumping. And I'm like, you know, this is the thing that brought me in this industry and it's kept me here. It's like a spiritual experience. But then all of a sudden that balloon gets pop, you know, and it's like, I look outside the window, I'm like, that is gonna be a long time until I feel and experience that again. So I just try to keep my head straight and help keep those expectations managed, because there are things we can do, but I don't know. Would you want someone stage diving on you anytime soon? I don't know.
If they all took the test, yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah.
Well, so
Again,
I think your question is, can we rely on testing to create a safe environment for a return to a venue experience? And I don't know the answer to that. It reminds me of news reports of the recent White House outbreak, where people have said, I shouldn't have relied on the testing. Everyone was getting tested all the time, and yet that didn't prevent this. So I don't know if it was faulty testing, that maybe they aren't as accurate as people thought that they were, or that even if you test negative, you might still have it at a lower level and then you end up spreading it. So they are saying that even if you're doing a lot of testing, you would still need to do a mask and you would still need to do hand sanitizing and other things. So until I got some really clear, definitive information that you could rely on that for mass gatherings from Dr. Fauci, I would say it's probably not the panacea.
That's how Europeans do it, as guinea pigs.
Guinea pigs.
Well, no, you know, we have schools opening up right now, and they're, some of them are becoming hotspots, some are not, and some of them have a lot of tests going on, and some don't. So, there might be models we can borrow from other industries doing things that would apply to music. But again, coming from the consumer's perspective, I would feel safe assuming Fauci and FDA approved it and had been tested. I'd feel safe coming there. But it's only one factor. Right now, you've got me there. Cody brought up an excellent point. No one's touring. So, okay, I can come, but who am I going to see right now? And, you know, that would also need to be in place and going. And it's just going to take a lot of factors happening all at one time. And all those factors are waiting on the other factors to happen. So who's gonna be the ready first? And I don't know how you coordinate all that together, particularly with the way things are federally and government. Right.
I mean,
to your point, Micco, I mean, we can learn about what other people is doing. I mean, we can take a look at the EU and you know, things hit hard there early, and there seemed to be a more coordinated, we'll say a more disciplined response to this. And then all of a sudden people got real comfortable, and Germany is like throwing shows with 2,500 people and like singing, and here we go. I mean, I'm sure y'all have like Apple News just like I do. It's like, uh-oh, here comes the second wave, you know?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things to learn. In a way, we're all like hamsters in this huge science experiment, just looking at people that are trying to do things or not doing things and going, not that, and okay, here's something I can learn over here.
We just want that step up.
Hoping to hear from Fauci. You know, he's like our health spirit wolf right now. God bless that man.
We're all just looking for one step up towards whatever normal is, because let's be realistic, it's not going to be a vaccine. And if it see what happens. I told you about the stuttering. And if there is going to be one, you know, politicians are going to get it, athletes are going to get it, celebrities are going to get it, and then Joe Schmo just wants to play his guitar is not going to get it. We're not going to get it. You know, they actually had to have. I saw there was a meeting about heads of pharmaceutical companies who are working on the vaccine had to come out and say, we are not going to do this for profit. And we're like, yeah, right. Yeah. And it's not even a global effort at this point. It's like Germany, their companies are doing stuff. Pfizer and our US companies are trying to work it out. Whoever gets it, it's a race. It's not like a global effort where we said, okay, give me the smartest motherfuckers in Japan, the smartest motherfuckers in France, and the smartest motherfuckers in the US. Let's put them all in the room and then figure this shit out, because it's global. And you throw in, the greed and the capitalism and all that. And next thing you know, like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, what's in it for us?
It's like a
No,
sacrament.
must be glad that we're doing this for you guys. I'm like, motherfucker, we dying. I'm like, come on. But
But you know what? There's an upside to that. I mean, think about it. How often are working people guinea pigs? It'll be interesting to see the tables turned. Like, well, look at all the privilege. Let's see how y'all are going to be the first ones to test it out. I mean, I don't care. If it was available to me tomorrow, I'd be like, not yet.
exactly.
No,
So you have another year easy of living with this. So
Go ahead and price it at $5,000 so only rich people can get it. That's okay in the beginning.
Yeah, it's like, cool.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. So how can people help at this point? I guess you guys can go ahead and give some tips on that. Anything that people can do besides donate?
I don't know that, I mean, yes, donate if you can. There are a lot of venues who are launching GoFundMe's right now, and I'm certainly not going to tell anybody not to give to those. I think if that's something you can do, please do. But something that's more effective now that we have the city funding on the table, and we've got a lot of people inside the city and outside the city working on how to get that out as best as possible, then the best way for people to focus now is what you mentioned earlier, is to contact your senators and congressmen and tell them how important the Save Our Stages bill is. Because what's happening at the city was only meant to be a layover between the federal packages. It's not going to be enough to last forever. We absolutely are going to need some more federal funding, and it will make it so much better and more effective if it comes in the form of the Save Our Stages bill. So it will be directed for venues.
I mean, we're in election season. Is there like a candidate
as far as
that
I
actually
think
supports that? That actually supports some kind of that live music fund or?
Yeah, it actually has incredibly broad bipartisan support, and that's something that we've learned about music policy, is that it's something that it's a political win for everybody, which is really great because it's what music does. Music brings people together that maybe normally wouldn't hang out together, including politicians. So we've been really careful not to kind of criticize or go after a party or a candidate, because we're so grateful for the fact that this policy effort is bringing politicians together at a time when they aren't able to agree on anything else. Go ahead,
Anybody
Cody.
want to endorse?
Yeah, I will jump in there. Just as far as you can help. And again, I'm coming from the consumer standpoint. I'm going to show off something real quick. Let's see if I can do this. I bought a shirt from
Yeah, Marshall Walker, shout out.
What's up?
So as soon as the pandemic hit, I saw this shirt come up, and
Love it.
I was like, oh yeah, I love that. We're all local here, and anything I can do to help the venue that I frequent quite a bit, I'm happy to do so. And I encourage everyone to do that as well. Byron, my roommate, longtime friend of the show, and former Carlin in a way, he did the same thing as well. There were like care packages or something. Some of them were putting together, and he went and just bought them. Not that he wanted it, but just kind of the support, like nice little things. So you have ways to support your venues like that. If they open up even briefly and you feel comfortable, go out there and support them, even for just a little bit, right? Support them now so they'll be there later when everything's normal. And same thing with your artists. I mean, they're struggling too. Particularly a lot of smaller artists make most of their money doing live shows.
Yeah.
You can get 100,000 streams on Spotify, and that's like $100. And you can make more than that on one show in one night, right? And they get 100,000 streams in a whole year. So in addition to streaming, buy their stuff, buy their vinyl, buy their merch online, and just help them out. Spend your money where you want to spend it after the pandemic is over, is what I would encourage.
Yeah, I would support both the things that y'all are saying. I mean, in terms of real practical support. I mean, I might get a little philosophical with it. I think inside.
There's a quote.
There's a quote coming up, guys.
I mean, normally you could say, things aren't so bad. It's not like the world is burning. The world is burning right now, right?
Oh, I thought it was inspirational.
Well, we'll get to that. I'm going to say that, I hear from people every day, from all walks of life who love music and want to support. And they constantly ask me, well, what can I do? How can I get involved? How can I support? I mean, I don't know about y'all, but living and surviving through this, even in the early stages, I think, of the pandemic, we just feel helpless. We feel like we got to be engaged. We feel like we gotta sign the petition. We got to get out there and do what we can. And there are instances certainly where getting out and protesting and getting hyper engaged is absolutely necessary. But I want to remind people too, especially from the music community, our community is disproportionately affected by mental health, mental illness, addiction, homelessness. What you can do to help is to take care of yourself right now and survive. What you can do to help is to take some time, log off of Facebook, turn off the news feed and the TV, and do whatever you do that's your version of meditation, or putting your headphones on, get into the song. Like, take care of yourself and feel that love and feel that beat. Because as long as you're still here and that beat's still pumping, live music is going to be here and we'll all be able to get back together.
Can we do a slow clap?
Dude, Mike dropped.
I wanted to end the show on something else. I'm like, no, never mind. Cody got it.
I'm not saying anything else. I cannot talk about
I was like, thank you. Good night, everybody. No, this is great. This is great. I want to thank y'all so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I want to keep the conversation going. One way to I read like the Austin Monitor a lot because they keep up with what's happening. So austinmonitor.com, you can see what's going to come out of this live music fund thing. I'm sure you're going to cover that. Do you want to plug anything? How to follow you, the Red River District, Cultural District, Instagram, the social medias?
Sure.
Check
us out, redriverculturaldistrict.org, or same name on Instagram, Facebook. Also, Banding Together, we're going to announce another distribution for musicians and workers in Austin. So if you can, go check out Banding Together. And if you can donate, please donate to that. That's a way of taking care of people, buying groceries for people who are unemployed or just having a hard time right now in our community.
Rebecca, anything you want to?
Well, my social media is not nearly as cool as Cody's, but you can always find me at musicvenueallianceaustin.com. Although I will say that website is more venue facing. So if you are a venue owner, I probably already know you, but you can always find me there. And I try to keep the press coverage current on there. And, there's always people wanting to know what's going on in the music community. Today, KUT launched their Pause Play interview with myself and Cody and the folks from Scratch House and from Cheer Ups. And so I encourage people to listen to that to kind of hear a little bit deeper dive on what's been happening over the last 7 months for venues.
Micco, anything to plug?
Sure. I write for the Down Market, always have for years. So I'll plug them at the Down Market on Instagram and Twitter. My roommate Byron takes photography for them at the Down Market.
Shout out to Byron.
Yep, shout out to Byron. I will plug the FeedBak podcast, which I still love and support.
Thank you.
So make sure you give back a follow as well. If you're listening to the show, you should be following and liking it. A lot of good episodes. I was listening to some old ones in preparation for this one, and they're really good.
180, man.
Listen to some of these.
7 years ago, I started this thing.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Good job, buddy.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. So as always, follow the FeedBak everywhere on the social medias and all that good stuff. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Stay safe, stay strong. We're all here to support, and have a good night. Thank you so much, Cody. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Micco. Always a pleasure. And we'll talk to you next time. Ciao, ciao.
Goodbye, world.
Bye.